People ridiculed him for his age, yet when violence threatened to erupt, he stood as the sole individual capable of preventing disaster. Sometimes the person who speaks least in any gathering carries the most profound history. Our tale unfolds during what appeared to be an ordinary Saturday in Houston, Texas, a tranquil neighborhood under bright spring skies, featuring a man society had overlooked until desperation made him essential. The wailing of emergency sirens shattered the peaceful Saturday afternoon rhythm. Startled birds fled from power lines while children stopped their playground games, and residents peered nervously through their window curtains. Within the heart of the Valley Oaks residential community, pandemonium erupted beneath Texas's cream-colored sky. A full dozen SWAT officers in black gear surrounded the perimeter of Building C, weapons drawn and ready, radio communications buzzing with urgent chatter. An emergency command station hastily assembled near an weathered oak tree that had witnessed more birthday celebrations than gunfire throughout its existence. Standing just outside the yellow barrier tape was Elijah Brooks, age 74. His silver hair was concealed beneath a black knit cap, his wool jacket buttoned tight despite the mild spring temperature. His right hand gripped a folded USA Today newspaper, its corners worn from handling. His left hand displayed a slight tremor, not from nervousness, but from shrapnel embedded in his wrist from decades past, a physical reminder that time couldn't erase. Listen, old-timer. The senior center's down the street 2 blocks. A young officer called out rudely without raising his eyes from his paperwork. Maybe catch some game shows instead. Cruel laughter erupted from the group. Elijah remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the 4th-floor balcony of Unit 407. His floor, his neighborhood, the apartment located just 3 units from his own, had become the epicenter of a dangerous hostage situation. 3 innocent civilians were trapped inside at gunpoint. The perpetrator had made no specific demands, only delivered a single, chilling ultimatum: attempt entry and everyone perishes. Elijah recognized the suspect, a tall figure with a noticeable limp who received mysterious packages during nighttime hours. Reserved, calculating, something distinctly unsettling about him. Elijah had attempted to alert building management previously, probably just Amazon deliveries they'd dismissed. Don't concern yourself, Mr. Brooks. Now concern filled everyone's minds. A police surveillance drone circled overhead, monitoring heat signatures within the building. 2 figures crouched near a window while the third paced restlessly like a caged predator. The SWAT team prepared for their breach operation. Elijah shook his head with understanding. He could clearly see the tactical flaws, the approach angle, the exposed areas in the team's coverage, the unguarded western fire escape route. He had taught these exact entry methods and their vulnerabilities over 3 decades earlier. A gentle touch on his shoulder interrupted his thoughts. "Sir?" came a softer voice. He turned to face Officer Natalie Monroe, late 20s, brown curls tucked beneath her uniform cap, regarding him with courteous concern. "Your position too close to the action. We need you to move back for safety." "Reasons." "This is my residence," Elijah responded calmly, gesturing toward the building. "Unit 403. That's my floor." Monroe glanced toward her commanding officer, who rolled his eyes dismissively. "Right, and I suppose I'm James Bond," he scoffed. But Monroe didn't join the mockery. She studied Elijah more carefully, noticing his composure, the way he remained unfazed by the chaos, the weariness in his expression. Not fear of danger, but frustration with incompetence. "Officer," he said, leaning slightly closer and lowering his voice, "they're planning their entry from the wrong direction. That'll activate the motion detectors near the staircase. I observed the suspect installing some kind of wiring last week. She hesitated." "How could you possibly know that?" Elijah's eyes met hers directly. "Because I've conducted operations in far worse locations under much more challenging circumstances. That particular apartment has a hidden passage connecting 405 and 407. It won't appear on any blueprints they're consulting." "Sir," Monroe began uncertainly when he spoke the words that changed everything. "Echo Leader. Operation Granite Peak. Monroe's eyes widened. The radio on her vest crackled to life. Across the lawn, Captain Aaron Tate looked up sharply, his jaw tightening. "What did he just say?" Tate demanded. Monroe raised her radio. "He claims to be Echo Leader, Granite Peak Operation." Silence followed. Then, "That mission was classified, sealed records, not even in public databases." "Precisely," Elijah replied, "and that's why I'm still here to tell you." He slowly withdrew his weathered wallet, producing a creased military identification card. Its edges were faded but unmistakably authentic. Monroe stepped backward, visibly stunned. "Captain," she called out, holding the ID high. "We need immediate verification on this." Tate approached skeptically. "Sir," he said tersely, "even if this identification is legitimate, that doesn't authorize you to interfere with our operation." Elijah remained steady. "I'm not interfering. I'm providing a warning." Tate gestured toward the bustling command center behind them. "We have a complete tactical squad, aerial surveillance, thermal imaging, and a behavioral analyst. What we don't require is a retired soldier with delusions of heroism." Monroe interrupted. "Captain, respectfully, this man has observed details we missed. The hidden passage, the approach angle." Tate exhaled in annoyance. Elijah glanced back at the building, noticing a subtle change in the fourth-floor lighting that most would overlook. "There's a distinction between courage and arrogance," Tate muttered. "Then this information should matter," Elijah said, turning back and raising his voice for nearby officers to hear. "The man inside is Malcolm Crane. I trained him in South Carolina in 1988, 3rd Reconnaissance Unit. He was my most promising recruit." Tate froze. "That's impossible." Elijah's voice dropped. "He vanished in Beirut, returned as a broken man. I recognize that limp, that haunted expression. You never forget your own soldiers." The atmosphere grew tense. A gentle breeze stirred the command tent's edges. "He made a specific request," Monroe said quietly, still focused on Elijah. "Radio contact 10 minutes ago. Would only communicate with Echo 7. We assumed it was meaningless." Elijah's voice remained calm and controlled. "He requested me because he knows no one else understands his pain anymore." Tate hesitated while Monroe contacted headquarters for verification. The response came swiftly and definitively. "Confirmed. Elijah Brooks, Commander Rank, Delta Echo Unit, honorably discharged. Mission Granite Peak classified." Captain Tate swallowed hard. "What? What's your recommendation?" Elijah turned toward the building. "I intend to resolve this before you escalate the situation. But the danger—" Monroe protested. He looked at her, then up toward apartment 407. "Respect," he said gently, "isn't distributed freely. You must earn it. That man believes no one acknowledges his existence. But I do." He stepped beneath the tape, and no one attempted to stop him. The building's stairwell carried the scent of aged paint and forgotten decades. Elijah moved with deliberate, measured steps, not from age but from tactical calculation. Every corner, each landing, every creak of the floorboards beneath his feet conveyed information. He wasn't navigating through a hostage crisis. He was walking through living memory. Outside, chaos continued in hushed tones. Captain Tate issued orders for positions to hold. Monroe gripped her radio, conflicted between procedure and intuition. Her instincts urged trust in the elderly man while her training questioned his solo approach. Elijah reached the third-floor corridor. The air felt unnaturally still, windows sealed shut. The silence was familiar, the kind that preceded violence. He paused near apartment 403, his home. The door sat slightly ajar with accumulated mail beneath the slot. Inside, a photograph of his deceased wife remained by the window, dust-covered but cherished. He touched the doorknob tenderly, then released it. Sentiment would have to wait. Turning toward a hidden panel he'd installed during a building renovation decades earlier, part of an emergency escape route never included in updated blueprints, he slid it open with a quiet metallic grind and entered the crawl space. Darkness enveloped him. His breathing slowed, his knees protested, but his instincts remained razor-sharp. The narrow passage led to a ventilation grate above the bathroom in apartment 405, adjacent to the standoff location. Through the slats, he observed Malcolm's silhouette pacing nervously. 3 hostages, 2 women and 1 teenage boy, sat bound, together near the kitchen area, terrified but unharmed. Elijah exhaled slowly. No lives had been taken yet. Time remained. Back outside, Monroe stood by the command post as Captain Tate cursed and paced anxiously. "This is a catastrophic error," he growled. "He's just a walking memory." "That man's service record belongs to a forgotten war," Monroe responded firmly. "But the man inside remembers, and he remembers him." Tate scoffed. "You're actually gambling lives on ancient history?" "I'm betting on something you've apparently forgotten. Experience," Monroe replied. For once, Tate had no comeback. Inside the apartment, Malcolm suddenly turned. "I know you're nearby," he shouted toward the entrance. "Don't send another inexperienced officer with a badge. I specifically requested Echo 7. Elijah's voice emerged clear and steady, through the ventilation system. "I'm hardly inexperienced, Malcolm." Malcolm stopped cold. Hearing his name spoken that way, flat, low, familiar, sent chills through his body. "You don't belong here," he hissed. "You abandoned us. They all did. You watched us suffer." "I fought for you," Elijah responded. "I submitted reports, requested assistance after Beirut. They buried the documentation. Not me." Malcolm moved closer to the bathroom. Elijah could see him clearly now, bloodshot eyes, thin sweat streaks cutting through the grime on his forehead. "They didn't bury me," Malcolm whispered. "They buried everything we represented." "I understand," Elijah said quietly, "because they attempted to erase me as well." Malcolm turned and retrieved a small black device from the counter, handling it delicately. "You remember this design?" Elijah squinted. He did recognize it. A motion-activated pressure mechanism, homemade, modified with wireless synchronization. Exactly the type he'd taught in 1987 for urban infiltration training. A tool designed to preserve lives, now corrupted to destroy them. "You taught me its construction," Malcolm said. "I've made improvements." "You learned survival skills," Elijah replied. "But not healing." Malcolm's hand shook. "They transformed us into ghosts. Now I'll ensure they hear our voices." A pause. Elijah spoke gently. "And those innocent people in the kitchen, will they hear you when the building collapses on them?" The silence that followed was fragile. Meanwhile, Monroe accessed a surveillance drone hovering near the building's western side. Video feed revealed Malcolm's window where something metallic glinted on the sill. She enhanced the image. A sensor device exactly as Elijah had warned, triggered by vibration or thermal changes. "Captain," she called, "there's a visible device. I believe he's rigged the apartment." Tate looked up, frowning. "Are you certain?" "He was correct," Monroe said. "He's been right about everything." Tate remained silent. Inside the crawl space, Elijah's legs had gone numb. He shifted slightly and whispered, "Malcolm, do you recall what I told you when you built your first circuit?" Malcolm stared toward the door. "Elijah," he called softly. "I told you," Elijah continued, "you cannot combat darkness with additional darkness. You can only create light so brilliant that shadows have nowhere to hide." Malcolm laughed bitterly. "Pretty words won't save them." "No," Elijah agreed, "but neither will an explosive device." Another pause. Then Elijah added, "I understand why you selected this building, apartment 407, your former training quarters. You wanted recognition. That's why they're still alive. You don't want destruction. You want acknowledgement." Malcolm blinked. "You noticed." "I always noticed, son." A long breath. Malcolm finally whispered, "What should I do?" Elijah moved with speed that defied his age, dropping from the vent and landing behind Malcolm in the bathroom. In one smooth motion, he restrained his former trainee against the sink and disarmed the device. Malcolm offered no resistance. The two men stood in silence, Malcolm's shoulders sagging, his breathing stabilizing. "You're not the first to feel abandoned," Elijah said, "but you can be the last to make others pay for it." Outside, SWAT equipment clicked as Tate prepared for breach. "Captain," Monroe urged, "give him more time." "We're out of time," Tate replied. But then a voice cut through the radio, calm and authoritative. "Blackbird Command, Delta Protocol, abort entry, confirm chemical threat." Every operator froze. The code was archaic. Only a handful of military personnel recognized its meaning. Tate stared at the radio. Where did he learn that code? Monroe's voice came softly behind him. "Because he's Echo Leader." Moments later, the front door opened slowly. Elijah emerged first, upright and unwavering. Behind him came the hostages, alive, shaken, but unharmed. Malcolm followed with hands raised, eyes red and downcast. SWAT teams lowered their weapons. Medics rushed forward, cameras clicked rapidly. Reporters pushed past barriers, then fell silent. No one spoke as Elijah handed the disarm trigger to Monroe. "Threat neutralized," he said simply. Captain Tate approached with wide eyes. Who are you?" Elijah looked at him without anger, but with clarity. "Just a man you failed to see." In the crowd, a child asked his father, "Who is he, Daddy?" The Idashiden man stared, speechless. "Someone who used to be invisible, but not anymore." The sun began setting, casting amber light over the Valley Oaks complex. Emergency vehicle lights still painted the pavement red and blue, but the tension had broken. In the center stood Elijah Brooks, hat in hand, collar unbuttoned, not as a hostage negotiator or retired soldier, but as a man who had accomplished the extraordinary. He walked slowly, guiding Malcolm with one firm hand on his shoulder, the other holding the disarmed detonator. 3 SWAT members flanked them, uncertain whether to salute or apologize. Monroe ran forward, her voice tight with amazement. "Are you okay, sir?" Elijah nodded, gently handing her the trigger. "He never intended to harm them," he said quietly. "He just wanted someone to hear the noise in his head." Tate approached more slowly, his eyes weary, almost childlike. "Commander, Don't speak," Elijah interrupted, his tone level. "This isn't about you." And it wasn't. At the command tent, paramedics treated the hostages. One woman kept glancing at Elijah, whispering to her son who clung to her side. Cameras flashed continuously as media arrived hungrily. "Mr. Brooks," one reporter shouted, "can you verify your military background? Were you actually involved in Operation Granite Peak?" Another called out, "Why were you initially dismissed? Was it racial profiling or age discrimination?" Elijah responded, simply, "It's not about how I was overlooked. It's about what I accomplished when they needed me most." Then he walked away. 3 days later, his photograph appeared in every local newspaper. Invisible no more. Elderly veteran saves hostages, exposes systemic failures. Images showed him beside Monroe, holding his identification, saluting next, to a handcuffed Malcolm Crane. The mayor called personally. A modest ceremony was held on the city courthouse steps where veterans gathered, and a school marching band played an off-key rendition of the national anthem. A medal was pinned to his chest the same way it had been 45 years earlier, except this time cameras recorded the moment. But Elijah's expression never changed. His eyes remained steady, his voice quiet. He said little except one statement that echoed across every screen. "Respect is not a rank. It's what you do when no one's watching." But the story wasn't finished. A week later, Elijah received a call from Washington. "Mr. Brooks, this is Deputy Director Simon Reyes from the Department of National Security. We'd like to conduct a personal debriefing." At the federal office, he sat before a semicircle of high-ranking officials, admirals, generals, bureaucrats, and suits more expensive than their medals. On the screen behind them, Malcolm Crane's file was displayed. Redacted lines, stamped, erased, non-active, classified. Elijah said nothing, simply waited. One woman spoke. "There are others like him. Like you? Forgotten operatives, veterans, with no records, no care, and now some might be planning similar actions. You buried them," Elijah stated bluntly. "We did, and now we need your assistance to prevent what we started." Elijah surveyed the table. "You don't get to need us now that we've become problematic, not unless you repair what you destroyed. And what does that mean to you? Complete reintegration and mental health programs, public acknowledgement, retroactive benefits, and not just for Malcolm." The room fell silent. "That will cost millions," one official whispered. "And how many lives will it cost if you don't?" 3 months later, an unmarked gray building in downtown Houston opened its doors. Inside, the first group of veterans sat quietly on folding chairs. Men and women once declared invisible. At the front of the room, a plaque read, "The Tempest Initiative," founded by Elijah Brooks. Malcolm Crane was the first to enter those doors, not as a prisoner, but as a patient. As for Captain Tate, his downfall was swift. An internal investigation revealed a long pattern of discriminatory conduct. Body camera footage, personnel reports, even old complaints that had been quietly buried. He was demoted, removed from command, reassigned to administrative duties in a distant county. No press release, no ceremony. Simultaneously, Natalie Monroe was promoted, officially recognized for her instinctive judgment and moral clarity during a high-risk operation. Back at Valley Oaks, the building returned to tranquility. Children played. Again. The old oak tree stood tall, its bark still marked by SWAT boot prints. Inside apartment 403, Elijah sat in his recliner, sipping black coffee. The news played softly in the background. He gazed at a new edition on his shelf, a photograph of himself shaking hands with the mayor, 3 grateful hostages smiling behind them. But next to that photo sat something even more precious, a folded piece of paper with 5 words scribbled in ink. Blackbird Command, Delta Protocol Abort. The words that prevented a war. The words no one believed he still remembered. One afternoon, Elijah was invited to address a new class of police recruits. Inside the precinct's newly named Elijah Room, rows of young officers waited, fidgeting in fresh uniforms. At the back of the room sat a familiar face. Tate, no rank now, no stripes, just a name tag. After the lecture, Tate approached Elijah. "I requested transfer to this training," he said. "I thought perhaps I should learn how to see better." Elijah studied him for a long moment, then spoke low and firm. Observation begins when you release your assumptions. A pause. "Welcome." As he drove home that evening, the sun hung low over Houston, casting long shadows that never quite reached his tires. He thought about the past, not with bitterness but with precision, the way a soldier folds a flag, tight, controlled, respectful. Some men need to fall to learn. Others just need an example to follow, and sometimes justice doesn't arrive with sirens or medals. Sometimes it walks on tired knees and simply waits until the room is quiet enough to listen. Respect isn't given. It's earned in silence, in scars, and in the moments when no one's applauding.